now we see ourselves where we are. And do expectations rise because of this? Yes, maybe unwarranted, but you think, okay, if we're able to achieve this quickly, what are the next steps? So, 5 years from now, we'd of course love to be in the top division. We'd love to be in the Premier League. With Valérien, I don't think it's one thing he said. I think it's who he is. He was so clear and forthcoming about what he wanted and how he felt he could, help Barnsley take that next step. And just because you're in a position of leadership doesn't mean you're a good leader. I believe that wholeheartedly. But he has a strength in his leadership that's unquestionable in a way. And no matter where you come from in the world, what language you speak, you look at him and the message he's delivering, you think, okay, I'm going to follow this guy. I would go into battle with him.
First off, how disappointing for you was it to lose Gerhard Struber after the incredible work he'd done at the end of last season, keeping you in the Championship?
Yeah, it was bittersweet. I mean, I think we all recognize the opportunity that Gerhard had before him to get back in the Red Bull system, and we were never going to block him from that. In the same regard, he helped us with the Great Escape last year and stay in the league, and we were developing and growing ourselves into a very competitive team within the Championship, and he was leading the way. So at the time, yeah, definitely bittersweet, but it's worked out for all parties involved. And I think Gerhard pushed us into a different phase as a group and as a club, and now we've taken that next step.
Yeah, for sure. Did you have a plan in place for his departure? You mentioned, obviously, there was a few rumours going around in the weeks leading up to it that he might be offered this job. Did he tell you beforehand? And did you have a plan in place for his departure when eventually it happened?
Yeah, Gerhard and I have a very good relationship to this day, and we had a great working relationship while he was the head coach at Barnsley, and we kept in constant communication. The thing that's special about Barnsley is we kind of prepare ourselves for any eventuality. So our recruitment, not only with players but with staff, is kind of ever changing. It's malleable. It can adapt to any sort of situation that might arise. And we were pretty well suited within our group. We didn't want to lose Gerhard, but we thought if and when it happened, we had a pretty good list in behind that we knew would fit our philosophy and fit the model of the club. So yeah, we were prepared. We were not obviously, just willing to let Gerhard go. We wanted to keep him, but we knew that if the situation came to the fore, we would be able to adapt.
And could you talk us through from that moment where Struber's left and it's official, it's confirmed? Could you talk us through the process of appointing Valérien Ismaël? How many names are in the running and how did you get to that decision?
Yeah, again, we have a working list of head coaches and managers that we're constantly evaluating and looking at, just because the game is so fast now in terms of personnel coming in and out of clubs, the amount of money, the ups and downs that a club may go through, and sort of what have you done for me lately? It seems to be more rapid than it had in the past. But that being said, with Valérien, he was at the top of our list because we at the club have recognized that this style of play of making sure the counter pressing, high pressing, gagging pressing, if you will, is the main element behind what we're trying to achieve with our young group. And Gerhard's team at last glance the season before was the second best in Europe at executing that style of off the ball management. And we were happy just that he, would receive us and take us into consideration. We go through the process where you speak to two or three, but pretty early on, it was evident that if Valérien had the ability and the want to come to Barnsley, that he was going to be our guy. And the situation and I think the evolution of sort of our coming together was very smooth, and it just felt right from the start.
And onto the kind of the logistics. I think a lot of fans and people from the outside don't really know how a manager is appointed at the club. Were there any problems? How did you first? Do you go through agents? How did you get in touch with them and convince him to take the job?
Yeah, you go through. It's not always agents. You just go through the contacts you have within the sport, and it's a global sport, but it's a small world these days. It's very easy to get in touch if you want to. We thought we may have some stiff competition for Valérien after the season he had prior. And I know there were other teams interested in him that he had spoken to, but he made it clear to us that, his dream was to come to England and establish himself and show that this style of play could work in England as well. And obviously he's done that. So yeah, it's worked out for all parties involved.
Did you set targets for him as he came into the club? What were those targets for him and Barnsley this season? Was it just to stay in the Championship again, or build?
Yeah, that was the thing that kind of attracted us to Valérien. Is we had a very clear, message and what we wanted to achieve as a club, and he came back right at us with the most clarity, the probably the strongest conviction in what he wanted to achieve and how he wanted to approach his work. It was a no-brainer from there. And we were very clear from day one to start the season that we wanted to retain our status of being a championship club, and we wanted to take a step from last year. We wanted to grow and make sure that our young players were developing. We wanted to be out of the relegation scrap. We wanted to make sure that as a club we were hitting the next phase, and that was Valérien's first goal with us, and he knew that, and that's what he has trumpeted, from day one. And it was the main goal, and now that we seemingly are on our way to achieving that goal, it's now taking one game at a time.
And was he always the first choice from the outset, or did it take a few meetings for him to be first choice? Were there other maybe more recognized names in the running for the job?
I wouldn't say there were more recognized names, or there were, it was first, second, third. You have a group, right, that you want to speak to first to make sure you understand the personality and the character behind them. And so you have those initial talks sort of as a gauge, a temperature check, if you will, between, the club, and the head coach also wants to see what the club is about and what its personnel want from him. And I think after that first round of going through the top 3 or 4 that, we had earmarked that can we speak to these guys, that Valérien was the clear choice. So in the interview process, because we have a very strong groundwork of what they have done from a data perspective and from a previous history and results perspective, that lays the foundation. And then you really want to get into who the character of the coach is and what he's bringing to the table and how he fits in. And, Valérien checked every box from day one.
I know you've touched on a few things already, but is there one thing in particular, or one thing he said or showed to you that got him the job?
I don't think it's one thing he said. I think it's who he is. He was so clear and forthcoming about what he wanted and how he felt he could, help Barnsley take that next step. And there wasn't a lot of additive. There wasn't, 7 or 8 different things that he thought he needed to implement. He had a clear directive. He showed it to us. He explained it to us very clearly and succinctly. And that's who he is. He's now come to the club, and because of his, self-assurance and belief in what he wants to do, it's infectious. And as our results have shown, people follow his lead.
You mentioned following that data-driven process. What similarities and differences did you see between him and Struber when he came in?
Yeah, I think the off the ball sort of defensive strategy were pretty like, and they come from the same school of the German Austrian approach that has been for 5, 6, 7 years of pressing high up the field, creating as many chances in the attacking third as you can. It was very much similar. The formational approaches were a little different, but Valérien had shown and Gerhard had shown that they're able to adapt how the back line looks, whether with a 3 or a 4, with 2 wing backs or traditional fullbacks. The only, real differences was kind of through the in possession play. Gerhard is kind of the newer school Red Bull approach of trying to play through the lines, play through the back, and then make sure when we lose the ball, we win it right back. Where Valérien has the approach where he knows at Barnsley, because of our approach as a club and our philosophy, that every game we may not have the most talent on the field. So how do we mitigate risk? How do we make sure that we're putting the pressure and putting the risk on the other team by being, it's directional playing behind. It's not just the old school route one at all. It's how can we play to our strengths of, the players that we have in the front half, pin them in behind and create as many chances as we can, and basically dominate the team through pressing and chance creation.
Definitely. Seems like hard work to play for that team, but it looks so successful at the minute. What do the players think of him? Have they taken to it? Seems like they've taken to him absolutely brilliantly and they love playing for him. Is that the case?
Every time there's a manager switch or a head coach switch, it takes players time to adapt, especially young players. But the good thing is with a young player, again, there's malleability. They have an open mind. They want to be as successful as they can in a short period of time to grow and develop and to a long-term, long-sustaining career that they may have. And again, I keep coming back to this, but because of the way Valérien is as a person, because he's so positive in his beliefs and his self-confidence in the things that need to be achieved as a group to have success, it's very hard to question. Yeah, the results came, and now everyone is bought in. But even before the results came, people bought in. It helps that he's 6'5" and he's built like a Mack truck. So you can't really question him face to face. But that being said, the guy has such a wealth of knowledge of the game from not only his playing career but his managing career. He's seen it all. He's done it all. It's very difficult for a young player or a young staff member or someone in the front office to question anything he's doing because of his belief and his self-confidence and also the wealth of knowledge he's gained throughout his career.
And could you possibly, when you made the decision to bring him to the club, could you possibly have seen it going as well as it has done?
No, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I thought this would be as successful as it has been. Did I believe that he would achieve the goal of taking us to the next step? I did. Did I think we would get to where we are right now as quickly as we have? I'd be lying if I said I did. But
for sure.
Listen, I'm not questioning anything that's been undertaken for us to get here.
Do you think the club is ready? And I'm going to say these words very tongue-in-cheek. Are they ready for the Premier League? Are you ready if the Premier League comes knocking next season?
I'm staying away from all the P words, and those P words are playoffs, promotion, Premier League, and I'm touching those right now. I'm following my head coach's lead and saying, one game at a time, one by one, that's how we're going to approach it. Now, as a club, you have to prepare, and we'd be hypocritical if we didn't prepare for any eventuality. But right now, on the field, we are taking this one game at a time. It would be very fun, I think, for everyone involved, the community especially, if Barnsley were able to take the step. But again, I'm avoiding the P words at all costs.
And you don't have to mention those P words again, I don't think. But where do you see Barnsley in 5 years' time? And also, where do you see Valérien Ismaël in 5 years' time?
It's a tough question, because if you asked me this at the beginning of the season, I had a pretty easy and I think thought out message that we're going to continue to grow within the division and hopefully within 5 years make the step to fight for promotion to the Premier League. Now we see ourselves where we are, and do expectations rise because of this? Yes, maybe unwarranted, but you think, okay, if we're able to achieve this quickly, what are the next steps? So 5 years from now, we'd of course love to be in the top division. We love being in the Premier League, and we want to adhere to our philosophy, both financially and in recruitment of our talent, no matter what comes. I think that is the main driving force behind the club, is to make sure that the self-sustaining philosophy that we have is not sacrificed at any time. With Valérien, honestly, the sky's the limit. I mean, the guy has been here less than a year. He's taken the league by storm. He has everyone believing, not just in Barnsley, but outside the club. And the guy is, in all facets of life, is I think, so well-rounded. He's a great father, great husband. He misses his family. He's sacrificed being away from his family, his friends, to come here. But he's never wavered. He just has this belief in what he's trying to achieve day in, day out, week in, week out, and he never wavers from it. So to put any sort of ceiling on Valérien within the 5 years, I think, is unfair to him.
Does he speak about missing his family much, or any of his weaknesses is with you?
Valérien's a reserved guy. He, doesn't go into, too much detail about his personal life, which, again, I respect fully and completely. But of course, he misses his young children, his wife, his family abroad. Who wouldn't? Because of the pandemic, he's had a hard time being able to see them, and everything's as we are now over video chat. But he doesn't allow it to affect the work or his attitude or his approach to all of us, to the staff, to the club. And that's what's amazing about him. But I mean, listen, deep down, it would affect anyone.
Yeah. Do you think there's any plans in place to try and bring them to the bright lights of Barnsley? Show them the auction?
They've actually visited. I think because of the rules right now, it's just hard to cross borders. I know he's counting down the days in which he can actually see them again, whether that's in the UK or going back to Germany. But I don't know if there's any specific plans in place.
And do you guys have a plan in place? Obviously, performances like this from a manager in the Championship don't go unnoticed. Have you got a plan in place if he is poached by another club?
We're not thinking about that right now. I've spoken to Valérien a couple of times and about sort of what he feels, just subtly what he feels about the club, how he feels about his future. And again, the guy is so driven on the task at hand. Yes, of course, as a club, we always, again, Barnsley always prepares for eventualities, but we haven't gone down the road at all. We have him on a multi-year contract. He is our leader. Everyone is following his lead. So yes, you stay prepared, but there is, Valérien is our head coach, and may it long continue.
And what are the kind of key pillars you've got in place at the moment? You mentioned some young players, development, the key pillars for long-term success at Barnsley.
Again, we're pretty clear about what our philosophy is and why we think it'll bring forth long-term gains and sustainability. So, we try to recruit 24 and younger, and make sure that we're keeping the team young and building players that we know have room to grow and will take strides in the game. And we know we can go and find assets through our data-driven approach that are undervalued, players that are undervalued, that when they come to Barnsley, they know they're going to play because the pathway is there. And being able to, reap the rewards of, the team is doing well, our players are doing well. Now we haven't spent a lot of money, if at all, in competition with the group around us. But we're able to sustain a level of competitiveness and, financial calm, if you will.
And the final question for me really is just, if you could summarize like maybe 3 strengths that Valérien Ismaël has, what his biggest strengths are, and what he means to Barnsley and what he's brought to the club, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think number 1 is the clarity of his message. The fact that he doesn't mince words. There's no gray area. Everyone knows exactly what they need to do to fit the system and achieve success. That's 1. The self-assurance or self-belief in what he's trying to achieve. There is nothing false. There is no guise in anything he's trying to do. What you see and what you hear from him is who he is. And then I think it's just a strength of leadership. And leadership is a very broad and sometimes vague word. But the fact that he is able to take a group of young players, some who are veterans, quote unquote, in our group, English players, German-based players, Austrian players from all over Europe, now a player from the United States, and convey a message that they all feel, including his staff, is the right one for the total success is a leadership capability that not a lot of people have. And just because you're in a position of leadership doesn't mean you're a good leader. I believe that wholeheartedly. But he has a strength in his leadership that's unquestionable in a way. And no matter where you come from in the world, what language you speak, you look at him and the message he's delivering, you think, okay, I'm going to follow this guy. I would go into battle with him. So yeah, and we're lucky to have him.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Dane, for answering all my questions and joining us on the Sportsman. Thanks for getting up your time, and I hope that P word is mentioned in May or slightly later in the season.